Hello everyone, welcome on in. It is a new week here on the Betting Weekly Dojo. We usually come to you on a Monday morning, but this week it's a Tuesday. I'm delighted to say I'm Nigel Seeley, joined by a professional gambler and my co-host on the dojo. It is Neil Channing. Before I introduce you to Neil, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like, give us a comment. Any comments that you want on this show, any comments from this show you like, anything you want to add to the conversation, you're more than welcome. This is your channel, so make sure you do that before we introduce Neil. And there he is. Mr. Neil Channing, another Debbie Harry top.
I have got quite a few Debbie Harry tops, actually. Yeah, I don't know whether I've won this one on the dojo before, but it's funny. It's Tuesday, and I'm already kind of on to thinking about the week ahead. I find in gambling, I'm never a massive one to spend time looking back. I like to look forward because I guess I'm a natural optimist, which maybe you have to be in this game. But I suddenly remembered I had like my best Saturday on the horses for like, I don't know, 2 years or something on Saturday. It was kind of ridiculous. I bet, I don't know, what did I bet? I bet an 18 to 1 winner. I bet a 10 to 1 winner, a 9 to 1 winner. But then at the end of the day, I went to bed that evening and the only thing I could think about was an 8 to 1 chance that I bet, who was 3 lengths clear over the last, traded 1.01. So minus 10, what is that? Oh God, I can't even
Minus
do
1,000.
the decimals now. Yeah. And got chinned on the line. Typical gambler. I was thinking about that as I fell asleep that night rather than all the lovely winners I'd had. Pretty ridiculous, really.
Well, good day. That's a good day. It's a nice move when I come on to you on a new week and Neil's had a good week. You can tell straight away by his body language that he's feeling good.
Well, I was feeling good also.
Feeling good.
I was thinking about you as well on Sunday because I watched. You probably didn't because you were in Rome, but I watched the TV BAFTAs, and our old mate Chris McCausland won a BAFTA. Amazingly, they have a BAFTA that's kind of. I said the BAFTAs are like the UK version of the Oscars, but they also have a television BAFTAs, and it's quite prestigious and quite sort of best drama, best actor, best actress, all that kind of thing. But somehow they had one that the public could vote for, and they voted for Chris and Diane for winning Strictly Come Dancing, which that put me in a cheerful mood. I had a very cheerful weekend actually. You look like you were having a really exotic weekend though in Rome. Very nice.
Well, it was very nice. The weather was absolutely gorgeous, very similar to the weather you've arrived back in the UK here today. The weather was great. The hotel was absolutely exceptional. The tennis,
and you bet a few winners on the tennis, I think.
Well, not really. They had a bit of a tough run. Tennis wasn't that great.
I followed Sean on a couple of his bets, and I must have picked well because I think I had 3 out of 3. But
you have had a good week.
Lucky.
I think we did all right in the early part of the week, but when I was out there, we didn't have such a good run. We've got some good tournament winner markets, and what I find fascinating is whenever we go away, we bump into people who watch this show. They're checking into the plane, and the guy comes over and says, "Nigel, I watch Betting Weekly Game Bet Match every week with you and Sean. I watch the dojo, I watch all the shows," and I thought to myself, "Well, this is really bizarre." It happens to me quite a lot.
A bloke came up to me in the street the other day and asked for a selfie, which was pretty amazing. And honestly, that used to happen quite often when I was playing poker on TV. But these days it's pretty rare. And if it does happen, it's because they've seen me talking about horse racing on TV generally. Well, this guy, he must have had a good memory because he said, "Oh yeah, I remember you from poker on TV." So that was pretty rare. But yeah, I did. I was playing poker actually online the other day, and a bloke in the chat box said, when's the next dojo? Is it on Monday? I love the dojo and all this kind of stuff. So that's our market, obviously, online poker players. They're the people that like it.
Yeah. And if you are an online poker player, you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. We're fast approaching 9,000 subscribers. We want to hit 10,000. I know I go on about it quite a lot, but it is very important to us to achieve these accomplishments, to be able to do all the shows that we like to do here and keep this trend going that we're doing on an upward curve on the channel. It's a big week of sport. Not only last week, Neil's back in winners left, right and centre. I'm travelling to Rome. The one thing about Rome last week, though, we went to the tennis. Tennis is glorious. Glorious tennis arena. Very busy. We're on the Sunday, very busy. but I went to watch Lazio against Juventus. It's the first time I've ever been to Rome to watch a match. I've been to Italy before. I watched AC Milan play Bari a few years ago, but this was a huge match. And Champions League qualification was on stake with 3 matches to go. I've never heard an atmosphere like it. I know people, the cliche you get there and the atmosphere is incredible and all this kind of stuff. Honestly, it was an hour before the game. You know, I would say the hairs on the top of my head stood up, but I haven't got any hairs on the top of my head. But if I did have hairs on the top of my head,
that would have been a true miracle.
Did
you do the thing of, you know, you're attending a big live sport event, and even though you don't necessarily fancy anything that much, you have to have a bet?
Yes, I did.
And did you kind of, do you think you'd have had a bet of any description if you hadn't have been going, or you just had a bigger bet than you would normally have done?
No, I had a small wager. I did just a matter of interest. But what it was, we were in this area of all the Lazio fanatical fans, and they were fanatical. And they were singing. There was about 6 anthems. You got like You Never Walk Alone, but there was like 6 different songs. Then they played the Gladiator theme tune, and then a woman sung on this. It was just insane. The flags were waving.
Did you bet the winners?
No, I didn't. I bet Lazio to win on the money. I thought that when I got there, I thought, well, this crowd and this atmosphere here has got to be at a massive advantage. And I didn't think it would be factored into the price, because I've been very fortunate enough to go to many sporting events, many football matches around the world, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that experience an hour before kickoff. So I thought this has got to lift the players. When the match came on, they were dreadful first half, and they left it late to an injury time equaliser. But I lost my money, but it was only a small wager, a tiny wager, give me some interest. But I thought I want to cheer the Lazio goal on with this crowd. I don't want to be betting Juventus. I don't want to be sitting in anyone.
At the age of 17, I went to watch QPR with the Camel, my old mucker, at Loftus Road. You've been there many times, I imagine, and you'll know that if in those days, if you're going to stand, you're on the side of the pitch. So we were standing.
The chicken pen, shed.
Yeah, it wasn't, we were with the QPR massive. Yeah, I mean, it's not really the most intimidating stadium. There's a bunch of school kids who got free tickets making most of the noise. And they were playing, I think they were playing Luton. And Luton, I decided, were a good bet at 5-1 to win the match. So I bet Luton at 5-1 to win the match. I can't remember what price they were to win 1-0, something like 10-1, I guess. So I think I had a tiny bet on them to win 1-0, and I bet them just to win the match. And after about 65 minutes, it was the most boring game of football you've ever watched. The Camel was moaning on about QPR, a long-suffering Hoops fan over the years. And lo and behold, Luton popped up and scored. And I jumped up and down and shouted, and then I suddenly realised I had about 300 QPR fans standing adjacent to me. But actually, I needn't really have worried. I don't think it's not the most threatening environment, Loftus Road.
I think the Olympic Stadium would have been a very, very different situation if I had bet Juventus and that I cheered at 1-0 up in that end. It was hostile, but anyway, it was a real great experience if you got an opportunity to go to Rome. And Rome this week hosts the Italian Cup final on Wednesday night, Milan against Bologna, and we'll have that covered on Betting Weekly Live with all the handicappers as well, which is every day at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Let's move on to next week. We said there we never look back. We've just reminisced on our weekend. All we've done for the last 6 minutes is reminisce about what we did at the weekend. This week we have golf's second major, and obviously we did a special on the US Masters. It didn't really go to plan from the betting perspective, but Rory McIlroy won his green jacket, and Rory McIlroy comes in here in good form, and he's the bookie's favourite. He's got a brilliant record at Quail Hollow, where this event is being played. He's won it 4 times, and he was lost in the playoff as well. I think he's had about 5 other top 10 finishes as well. His record here is insane. 102 under par he is, if you look at all his records. Roy McIlroy.
I know, it's kind of mad, isn't it? And obviously one of the big things about the Masters is that it's always played at Augusta every single year. So, players that... I read an interesting thing at Augusta about the putting, and basically until you've played there 4 times minimum, you just have no idea what's happening on the greens. And then you could see that sort of the peak numbers were that you had to have played 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. Once you'd played more than 7 times, you're probably over the hill. So the players that had played there 4 times, 5 times, 6 times were the best to bet on. And so I love all that about Augusta. And generally in the other majors, that doesn't really happen because they move around to different courses. But this time they're having the USPGA at a course which all of the players are very familiar with, Quail Hollow. So because they had the tournament, it used to be called the Wells Fargo. I think it's changed now, but they've been going there for like 20 years, and they had the actually USPGA there in 2017, and also they're the President's Cup there. So kind of as you say, Rory's got a great record there. There's one or two other people, Justin Thomas won it in 2017. Generally speaking, because he did very well with his putter. But the one thing about the course this week that will make it different to usual is, they've made it a little bit longer. They've extended some of the holes. I think they put an extra 10 yards on the first, for example. So it's 7,600 and a par 71. So it's a proper brute of a course, a really long course. But the other thing is it's been absolutely bucketing down there. All day Sunday, all day yesterday, and it was really raining there last night. I saw some pictures on social media, absolutely tipping it down. So it's going to play longer than normal. And actually, it's not like the US Open where the second you're off the fairway, you're in kind of 8 foot of rough. The rough is not really that scary. If you are wayward on this course, your main worries are that you hit it in the water or possibly in the trees. And the trees are never as bad as proper thick rough, I think, for dropping shots. So actually it's a course where driving distance is much more important than driving accuracy. And somebody like Scotty Scheffler, who's 5-1 joint favourite, he's not bad on distance by any means. He's a good driver, but really the reason he does well driving, look at the stats. Driving distance, he's 80th on the PGA. But strokes gained off the tee, he's second. You see, where he gets his shots is not by being particularly a hugely long driver. It's because he doesn't mess it up very often. Whereas Rory, he's a proper long driver. He's actually number 1 in strokes gained off the tee, but he's 3rd in driving distance. And I think this week, that's the thing that's going to make the difference. And actually, if you have a look at the players that are under 100 on exchanges, and then you just look at their driving distance, there's only now under 100 on exchanges, there's 20 players. 5 of them are live players. So just putting them aside for a minute, if you look at the other 15, how many have you got that are above average on driving distance? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 out of 15. So if you say driving distance is way the biggest thing, you can chuck out 8 of the top 20 in the betting just on that. Strokes gained off the tee, you can chuck a couple more out you can chuck 2 more out of those 15. I like to rule out a lot of the live players. John Rahm looks to have completely gone. I think Bryson DeChambeau is very short price, really. He was 16-1 the day after the Masters for this tournament. He's 8-1 now. Not that much has happened for us to learn more about Bryson DeChambeau since he came. He had a bad last day in the Masters, but suddenly he's halved in price. Now I get sort of why, because people say, well, this is a course for huge drivers, and he's a huge driver. But I don't know. He's 8-1. Rory McIlroy's 5-1. That doesn't seem quite right to me. But the difference between the two. So basically, I've ended up. I am going to bet a bunch of players, and I'm doing a write-up for Betting Emporium. It's free to view. Feel free to go to www.bettingemporium.com. I'll publish it. London time, 7 p.m. on Wednesday. So you'll see all my bets there and all the reasoning. But I can tell you for a fact that my main bet is going to be Rory McIlroy. And I just thought this was kind of interesting, and I wondered what your thoughts were, because I said it to a couple of people, and they said to me, well, don't you think he's quite a short price? And I thought this was quite interesting from a dojo point of view. what does that actually mean, a short price? Like he's 5-1. If I say to you, how did you get on this week, Nigel? And you say, oh, I did quite well. I backed a 5-1 winner yesterday. I don't say, oh, God, that's a bit of a skinny one, isn't it? You've bet a real shorty there. I'm thinking 5-1 in absolute terms, that's a medium price, isn't it? It's not a short price particularly.
I think it's on a golf tournament, it's a short price.
But if it was a tennis match, that would be a huge price outside.
It would be a huge match on a tennis. It would be a huge price on a football match if you bet a football one.
How many times do you bet a 5-1 winner on a football match on 1-2x?
Not many, but there's 3 outcomes there. On a golf tournament, there's 157 different outcomes. So people will think that 5-1 is a short price, but I don't think people actually realise the percentage which they're playing and how much the value on a 5-1 shot, or if you make it a 3-1 shot is, for example. So, if you make Rory McIlroy a 3-1 shot to win this tournament this week, that's a 25% probability. If you make him a 5-1 shot to win this week, it's a 16% probability. So automatically there, you've got 9% in your favour already. Yeah. So if you consider that to short odds, that it's a big favour. But obviously, when you bet a 3-on shot, say you bet a 3-on shot, and you compare that to like a 5
so minus 300.
Yeah, to minus 300 to minus 500, that moves that's a sort of 11% move. So that if that's the same kind of bet that you get a 3-on shot to a 5-on shot compared to a 5-1 to a 3-1 shot.
Well, don't you think that a lot of punters are making a big mistake if they're just thinking about prices in absolute terms? If you're just looking and saying, well, 5-1's quite short for a golf tournament because there's 156 players in the tournament, that's not really how you should think about it, is it?
Well, I think if you gave someone a 5-1 winner in a horse race and said there's an 8-runner horse race and it's 3-1, 4-1, and 5-1, you gave them a third favourite 5-1, let's say you're a genius, can have a bet next week. If you gave them, who do you think will win the golf? I think Rory McIlroy will win the golf. Who do you think will win the tennis? Yannick Sinner. Who do you think will win the women's tennis? Sabalenka. They go, well, I could have done that.
Yeah.
There is a tendency that people expect you, because you know something about golf or you know something about tennis. Oh, there's this South American youngster who's 16 and no one even knows it about. He's 5-1. He could win it this year. The days of Boris Becker. The bookmakers that have there are days of that happening without anything, anybody realising any of these players coming from nowhere are long gone. And the value may be in the favourite because there's a lot of people at 100s and 200s and 300s who should be 1,000 and they're taking.
Well, we've talked, haven't we? We've talked before about my old mucker, the favourite long shot bias.
Yeah.
The idea that the market is more efficient at the front end than it is with the outsiders. Partly because the people that originally start the market up, the seeders, the market makers, the odds compilers, those people focus a bit more on getting the favourites right. They're much less likely to be really concentrating that hard on whether somebody should be 150-1 or 200-1 when they're an outsider. They'll probably just err on the side of caution and open them up at 100 because they'll think if we take a bet, we've probably made a mistake. That's partly why favourite long shot bias works. It's partly just a kind of cognitive thing that some people do kind of look at a list of 156 people and say, well, I can't really back anyone at 5-1. That's a bit ridiculous. And obviously, you can look back and say, well, I can't remember now. What was Rory McIlroy to win the Masters? He was about 6-1,
8,
wasn't he?
I thought it was a little bit bigger, maybe 6.
It might have been 8-1. Yeah. But of course, he'd won a tournament, a considerably easier tournament, about 5 weeks earlier, where he was 9-1. And now I'm looking to back him at 5-1 to win a 156 runner affair. I mean, I would counter that by saying they practically built this course for him. One of the reasons that he wasn't 5-1 to win the Masters was because we know he's had some issues with the Masters in the past. It's a long time since he's won a major, mental frailties, that kind of thing. You could also turn around and say, well, the USPGA has a whole bunch of kind of semi-pro pros, club pros, those kind of players, and some past champions and whatever. You can probably rule out 45 of the field and say that they're, 500-1 or 1,000-1 to win it. which of course you can do that in the Masters as well. But I just, I looked, I think I had 6 categories of statistic to look at. And the worst Rory came on any of the categories was 25th out of 190 players in the rankings. So it just looks perfect for him. In terms of his kind of relative price, he's the same price as Scotty Scheffler. Now, obviously, Scotty is a brilliant iron player, brilliant approach player. This course, a lot of the second shots are going to be long because it's such a long course. Scotty scores really well. Of all the people under 100 to 1, he's the highest ranked person on approach shots from 200 yards plus. There's a lot to be said for Scotty Scheffler, but the point that I think that is against him is that his driving distance is not where he gets his strokes gained off the tee. It's a combination of his distance and his accuracy. He's good on both. And what you want to be is elite on distance this week, and accuracy is slightly less important. And that's basically Rory McIlroy. So I'm really happy with it, but I'm definitely conscious of it, especially putting up a tipping piece. I mean, from my own money, I'm happy. I'm going to have a big bet. I'm pretty happy with that.
As tipsters and people who
with my tipping piece, I'm slightly thinking some people will say, well, what's he doing here? He's tipping a 5-1.
You want to win to nothing, aren't you, with that? Because, if you bet a favourite and someone, you write a 200-word article, 300-word article. No, Neil, you do 3,000-word articles. You write these long articles and all of a sudden your favourite misses the cut. Then you look of absolute, they're going to say, well, he's an idiot. If he wins it, you'll go, well,
just pick the favourite.
He's picked Rory McIlroy. Exactly. But let's have a look at. I mean, I've got you talk about Rory McIlroy. He's played 8 tournaments this year, 3 wins, 5 top 10 finishes, 7 top 20 finishes, and 1 missed the cut.
Yeah,
so he's massively consistent this year. He's won a major, obviously the one he wanted to win, the Masters. You work out all the average.
Yeah, I'm going to back him each way. I don't know whether Bet Rivers are 7 places. I think
there are 7 places, and they're 5th the first 5, and they're 5-1, which is the top price in the marketplace. 5-1's
the top price. Yeah, I would think that's a
even
fair
top 7, which is pretty much his statistic. If you do average 4 of his matches, 4 of his tournaments this year, he's finishing in the top 7 out of his 8. So he's the win part. He's won 3 of 8. But when we compare this, I mean, we're talking about this. We're talking about whether you think Rory McIlroy is a good 5-1 shot. Now, I looked at some dominance of other sporting stars and said, we look at minus money favourites, and everyone says, "Oh, you're mad. You can't bet minus money favourite in these big fields." Well, Rafael Nadal used to play in a 128 men tournament in the French Open, and he won it in the space of 12 years. He won it 10 times, and his record in the French Open was 112 wins and 4 losses. And he used to start the tournament minus 110. Sometimes
I can't really remember. Were you've always been quite a big Nadal fan. Were you backing him at odds on to win the tournament at minus money?
I was always here to fade him, and how I wanted to fade him was try to find 2 or 3 in the bottom half of the draw.
Well, of course, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the big difference between tennis and golf. You can look at the draw and you can say, well, okay, if this guy wins, he's going to play this guy, and if this guy wins, he's going to play this guy. It doesn't work like that in golf. But it means that in tennis, you can have a good go at trying to work out what price they assume. Say it's, I don't know, whoever, Djokovic right now, and it's Wimbledon, and you've got the draw there. You can go through and you can say, if the favourites all win, he's going to play this guy in the second round, this guy in the third round, this guy in the quarter, this guy in the semi, this guy in the final. Let me multiply up all the odds. And that should give me the price on him to win the tournament. And you can compare that with the odds on offer. Generally speaking, again, on the favourite long shot bias, if you do those calculations on somebody that's about 33 to 1, you'll soon find that your calculator is telling you that they should really be 100 to 1. But when you do it on Djokovic, you'll find that the price is about right. And of course, the reason why you might want to take, say he's offered I don't know, plus, he's not such a dominant player anymore. Djokovic might be a bad example. Maybe I should have said Sinner.
Yannick Sinner.
Yeah, what price is Sinner to win Wimbledon?
Plus 180. It's played plus 180.
Okay, so supposing I do that calculation and I say, right, if he wins the first round, wins the second round, what's he going to be in each round, and I multiply it all up, it's probably going to come to plus 250 or something like that is going to be the price. And you're going to say, well, hang on a minute, he's only offered at plus 180. How could you bet him? But that's assuming that he actually ends up playing the absolute hardest game in every round. Presuming there'll be a few upsets along the way, he may get to play somebody where you thought he was going to play someone he's minus 200, and he ends up playing someone where he's minus 700 because there was an upset in the previous round. And then if you multiply those up, well, now he comes to less than plus 180. I think with a player like Sinner, he's probably going to end up being kind of fair value on the outright. But if you try and pick somebody at kind of 14 to 1, 16 to 1, 20 to 1, they're often not much value on the outrights because, when you do that calculation, you find that the bookies have kind of nicked.
But they are value to get to the final, aren't they? They're priced to get to the final is the value part. So if you're betting someone at 50 to 1 in a tennis draw and getting 25 to 1 to get them to the
you've got to get final, someone in the opposite half to the short price favourite.
Their probability to get to the final is probably, so if you're betting them at 50s and you're taking 25 to 1 the place that they're going to get to the final, when you do that calculation, their chance to get to the final sometimes could be 8 to 1, 9 to 1, 10 to 1. But if they run into Sinner or Pete Djokovic or a Nadal, then they're going to be 7 to 1, 6 to 1, just 5 to 1 to win the final.
Well, you
so
can get
odds to win it are massive.
You can get a sort of a similar thing in golf as well. It doesn't happen very often, but there was a time where Xander Schauffele didn't really win very often, but he'd keep coming second and sometimes third and fourth and fifth. And, he was often sort of 20 to 1 to win the tournament. And bookies were offering, 7, 8, 10 places. And, even though you didn't really think he was going to win because there was questions about his mental frailty, I think he may have overcome those questions now, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you could pretty much bet him every time because you were just on a kind of free bet, really. It felt like he just always placed. Those are quite interesting. But the other thing I'm finding quite funny about this whole kind of how can you bet Rory at 5 to 1 thing is, I don't know whether you've heard that expression in horse racing, the bigger the field, the bigger the certainty. I think sometimes, like if in a maiden race where there's one horse who's clearly better than all the others, I think people sort of think that they're better bets when it's a bigger field because the market offers them a price higher than they should be just because there's 20 runners or 18 runners and there's a bias in the market where people won't necessarily let the favourite go off odds on when it's got so many opponents, or it won't let it drop below plus 150 because, well, look, it's an 18-runner race. How can the favourite be that short? I mean, I find those kind of historical comparisons, sometimes you read in betting pieces, people will say, well, this is a really bad race for favourites. Favourites have a poor record. Well, I mean, I said earlier at the start of this, I'm not a big one for looking back, but that's the worst kind of looking back. I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, I kind of get it in certain kinds of races, how, races for unexposed horses, where they're trying a distance for the first time by the nature of the race. I get it that makes it harder for the market to analyse them, and therefore it might make it better for outsiders. Whereas races with established form patterns, you can pretty much say, with certainty that the favourite's priced correctly. But I don't, this idea that, well, golf tournaments should always be 8 to 1 the field because they're hard to find the winner of and they have 156 runners. Tiger Woods blew that out of the water, didn't he? There was a long period where golf tournaments were 8 to 1, 10 to 1 the favourite, and suddenly Tiger Woods came along. And I remember people saying, well, you can't really go less than 4 to 1, to win the Masters because, it's got 80 players in it or whatever. You know, and clearly you could, because he was just so dominant.
I remember working as an odds compiler then. You would put up Tiger Woods at plus 275 to win the Open Championship, and he would be the biggest liability in the book by a mile. And it was just a question of what price you could put it in that people would just not bet him, so you could have him in your favour. But I looked at Tiger Woods because we knew we were going to talk about this tournament. We knew to talk about favourites, and people saying you can't bet them at short price favourites. You can't bet Rory at 5. So I looked at Tiger Woods in his peak year of 2000. That was the year when he really got bet heavily. Like, you know, he went off at like $2 to win majors. I think one tournament, I think he started something like plus 140 or something to win an actual tournament. Well, in that year, he played 20 events in the year 2000. He won 9 of them. And he finished in the top 25 in every single tournament. Yeah. So when you think about him, his true price to win a tour out of 20 was probably plus 110, plus 120. Yeah. You know, that was his true probability price of winning a tournament. So you were getting double the price of his true reflection to win a tournament. And people in the industry were saying, well, we can't bet him at plus.
I'll tell you what, another interesting factor is that for people who are recreational on exchanges, there's not much joy in being a layer. They want to be a backer. They don't want to be the bookmaker. They want to be the punter. And in golf tournaments particularly, there's a reason why people are unattracted to being a layer, is because you've got to tie up a lot of money if you want to bet against Rory, even though he's kind of a short price for a golf tournament at 5-1. You know, if you want to win £100 fading him, you've got to put up £500. And lots of people don't really want to put up £500 to win just 100. But of course, when Tiger was going off, you know, plus 275, plus 250, plus 225 for tournaments, well, you could put up a lot less to fade him now. And suddenly a load of people that weren't normally in the business of fading golfers in golf tournaments got interested in doing so, and artificially pushed the price out, I think. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, clearly we haven't learned that much about Rory in the last, 3 months. We knew he was a great golfer. We knew he had some mental frailties and instability. And, we knew all about what the strengths and weaknesses of his game was because he's been around for so long. But what I do know here is that this is a tournament where the course is practically built for him. And he's not really much shorter than he is in a tournament where the course isn't totally built for him. I feel like that will do for me. But I just, on the whole kind of, set prices that you won't go below, I often, there's two things I hear a lot. One on horse racing. I often hear people on horse racing say, I don't bet things under 2-1. I mean, that just seems like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But also in gambling generally, people often say, well, I never bet odds on. I don't know. What do you think about those two things?
Well, it depends. People who never bet anything under 2-1, some of the best each way value you've ever had in your life, Neil, of things that under 2-1 in some of these races. In terms of odds on betting, I think it's impossible for me to not bet odds on because I bet a lot of football and a lot on tennis. So most of the stuff I bet on is odds on, but I feel the percentage I'm getting, it gives me the slight edge. I'm getting probably 4 or 5% on the market. I love betting players and tennis matches at 10-11, minus 110 when I make that guy an 8-11 shot or to 100%. I think I've got a bit of an edge. So I think anyone who has a specified rule is something that's been passed down from their grandfather and their dad, and we never bet odds on. I mean, we work with Sean Cavett on this show. Sean Cavett very rarely puts up an odds on favourite or anything odds on favourite. He can still make it pay. Me, I think sometimes there's value in odds on favourites. I think if you've got something at minus $2 and you make it at minus $4, as I told you about the difference in percentage chance between the two, I don't think you can ever have a time where you don't bet at this, or I don't do this, I don't do that. I think there's set rules that I would never keep to anything. I think each sporting event or each thing should be done on its principle. Just with regard to, I just wanted to go back before we leave Tiger Woods aside. I just want to ask you a question here. I mean, in the world we live in now, with the way that, the AI and everything we've spoken about in terms of the how prices have the way that pricing now is done. You know, pricing up, not an individual sitting there. You know, back in the year 2000, it would be a guy going, "What price should I put up Tiger? Oh, $2. Let's hope Mr. X doesn't bet him." First call, Mr. X at 5,000 Tiger. Oh no. Nowadays, do you think it could have been? You know, with the advanced price mechanisms we
It's
have
interesting, isn't it?
Tiger could have probably started some of these weaker tournaments with like -120.
I think you're right. We're undoubtedly people that were following Tiger at that stage of his career, just on the train, betting him every week, not really even thinking about it, just making it a standing order. They probably had the best of it over quite a long period of time. So, given that the market is a lot more sophisticated now, and the data analytics of the golf itself, but also just the way that pricing is approached, he probably would have gone off a lot shorter. Also, like I think we talked once before about the first goal scorer market. There was a time in soccer where the midfield players would enjoy, you know, people would play a sort of a 5-2-3 formation, and the midfield players or the wingers or whatever would score goals. So the spread of players that scored goals was a lot wider. And suddenly the game seemed to change, and it seemed to be that each side just had one main striker who was their guy that they spent the big bucks on. And he started to get a bigger percentage of the goals that team scored. And the market was so slow to react to that, just so slow. I mean, you remember, Nigel, players like Ian Rush, Alan Shearer,
8-1, 7-1. I used to do the price-wise tables at the Racing Post, and I can remember matches being like 9-1, the favourite.
Yeah,
and
you know, days. I can remember when Shearer was so dominant, and you know, I would look and think, blimey, he's 9-4 to be the first goal scorer. That's insane. It clearly wasn't insane. It was actually, but it took a long time for him to get there. It was week after week after week of the bookies getting killed, and dropping him to 5-1, and then 9-2 the next week, and 4-1 the next week, and finally arriving at the correct price. I think something like that these days would just get picked up on so much more quickly.
Yeah.
Not just because the punters are more sophisticated, but the bookies are more sophisticated.
And also as well, Neil, back in the day when soccer come apart of in the UK sort of psyche, when the Premier League started, there was hardly any betting interest in football compared to what it is now.
Yeah, that's true.
The volume of bets
you would take bigger liquidity definitely means that mistakes are less likely to be made, for sure.
There wasn't anybody really to capitalise on them. So I mean, I just think that you have to look at each sport as a priority and look at the value in terms of how. That's a good way of telling people to do it. Look at the tennis draw and work out the probability, and then working out, looking at the player on the opposite half of the draw and seeing which offers you the best value. But I think there's a lot of occasions in sport betting where people say you can't bet it at that price, and it comes in. I mean, Phil Taylor, how many successive times did he win the World Darts Championship? Oh, you can't bet Phil Taylor to win it.
Yeah,
plus 125. Well, he won it 14 times on the trot, didn't he? I mean, that was.
Well, I think also those hugely dominant sportsmen are actually quite hard to price up, because I mean, there's always a group of people that want to oppose them every single time, and a group of people that want to bet them every single time. And there's a tendency to just let the market settle where it settles. But actually, when we look back in retrospect, we find that the people that oppose them every time have usually hemorrhaged money. Well, people that oppose Steve Davis in snooker, Stephen Hendry in snooker, Phil Taylor in the darts, Michael Van Gerwen in the darts for a long time. You know, you could just print backing these people. I don't know whether that still works with Luke Little. I'm not really following the darts as much, but
I think it's a lot more competitive nowadays. I mean, the players are on a different level. You know, you got Luke Humphries, you've got other players in the world of darts who can beat him on any given day in the Premier League. I think in those days with Phil Taylor, it was literally Phil Taylor and John Part, and the rest of them were, you know, they were so dominant. And I think that might be the case with Tiger at the time. There was, you know, Jim Furyk was his main rival in the betting most markets. I mean, there wasn't really a Scotty Scheffler and and a John Rahm. I mean, Xander Schauffele. There's so many good players on any given day. Yeah. Justin Thomas has come back to some form now. You know, you can make a case for 10 in the top 10. In those days, really, it was Tiger, maybe opposing with Jim Furyk. He was the each way equivalent of John Parr and the dance.
I definitely bet a few Jim Furyk bets. Just quickly before we go, I saw we asked for a lot of comments last week. A guy posted a couple of quite long stories, but I did enjoy them. I'll quickly summarise one of them. I don't know whether you caught it. We were talking last week about Twitter putaways. You know, I'd been betting on that by-election, and somebody had tweeted to say that Labour were 200 ahead, and they'd gone into 1.1 minus 1,000 when they had been plus 300 just seconds before that tweet. And it turned out to be a load of rubbish. Like, I don't know where they got that idea, whether they made a genuine mistake or whether they were involved in the betting market, but they certainly had a huge effect on the betting market just for one tweet. And this guy commented, and he said that he used to go to cricket matches to bet on them so that he could be there and, you know, and get the balls in real time rather than having a TV picture delay. And he was at a match one day and it started raining, and the prices went a bit haywire because it wasn't clear at home how serious the rain was. So he had a few bets on that basis. And then it started to really rain and everybody realised that that was going to be it for the day. And he went back to his hotel. But he wasn't very far away from the ground, and he could see that it was still absolutely teeming it down with rain, and there was no chance of any play. And then somebody tweeted to say, "Oh, it's perked up a lot here. The sun's coming out, and the covers might be removed, and I think we're going to get a couple of hours of play." And I think he said the market went from minus $3 to minus 125 just on the back of this one tweet. And it turned out to be just a complete lie. And I just sort of thought, God, that's amazing, isn't it? That you could have an effect on cricket as well. Test match cricket is such a liquid market. How the hell did no one have any pictures of the ground in this day and age? That doesn't seem possible. I found it hysterical that you could do that. I found it quite amusing, really.
I put out a tweet from Rome last week, and I was watching Alcaraz warm up. And he was stretching his knee, and he was having a lot of work done on his leg, his lower calf and his legs. And it wasn't like a normal knockout in the tennis market. And I put up, I'm not quite sure, is this normal, that, you know, this work that we're doing on it? And he didn't play very well that night. And I thought that people might have picked up on that and thought, he might be a fade. But no one did. They must have thought,
maybe if you were standing
away too many times over the years.
Maybe if you were at Queen's standing on an outside court with no cameras around.
No, this was the practice court, Neil.
No, but if you did that and tweeted, "Yeah, I'm here at Queen's, you know, I'm watching so and so against so and so, and this guy, he's walking very gingerly," you know, whatever. Whether you could get a big drift in the betting.
I could do that, but I actually did that from the practice court. I filmed it. I see him. They were doing some weird stuff on his leg, and it definitely looked like he had a problem with the calf. He was stretching, and it was after his session. And I put it on, and I thought, the market might.
Well, all these people that are kind of professional courtsiders and, you know, go to golf tournaments to try and get a shot advantage over the people watching at home and this kind of thing. Maybe, you know, maybe there should be a world of professional Twitter liars that you just constantly lying about sporting events. I
think there's a lot of them, mate. But Alcaraz didn't look fit. Keep an eye on him for the rest of the week, Carlos Alcaraz. Okay. I think he might struggle this week. I think he's got a slight knock. Anyway, but just want to ask you one thing. I know it's you were talking about favourites and betting short prices in sporting events, but it's not really a sporting event. This, but anyone in Europe will know this weekend is the Eurovision Song Contest. We mentioned it before, and we have an odds-on favourite now, Neil. We have the Swedish entry.
Is it Sweden and a Denmark second or somebody?
No, Austria are second. Austria. Sweden are the favourites. Now, 5 of the last 6 years, and really since everyone can see the songs, and since we've got the world of the internet and YouTube and other votes and various different YouTube channels and various different internet-based votes come in, the market's pretty much called this.
The favourite just wins, do they?
5 wins. 5 of the last 6 favourites wins. I've looked at this song. They're number 1 in Denmark. They're number 1 in Norway. I think they're number 1 in Finland as well. So they're number 1 in all those sort of Nordic countries. and they're -110. People say never bet a -110 shot at the Eurovision Song Contest.
Well, I'm not sure what to do. I'm slightly thinking I might boycott the Eurovision Song Contest for political reasons, which we won't go into. But whether that means I have to boycott having a bet on it or not, I don't know.
Well, they're -110. I've looked at their song on YouTube. 10 million views have already watched it.
Well, maybe if I don't watch it, but I have a bet, that will be my conscience will be clear.
But that is a sporting event, not sporting, a betting event this weekend where you've got a minus money favourite. People say, how can you be betting that in a European-wide, a continent-wide voting contest? Well, they usually win. The favourites usually win. Neil, what have we got to do to follow us here?
Oh yeah, well, we do read the comments, as you can tell. So if you did like the video, hit like. But if you want to leave a comment or a question or a suggestion for a subject to talk about in a future show, we might just ignore you. But you never know. Occasionally we're looking for something to think about, and we do get lots of interesting comments. So please do join in the conversation. Do join us. Do join us every week. And the main thing, because Nigel is so keen to get to 10,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching this, I know subscribe sounds like you have to pay. It's free. Just press the button to subscribe, and there you go. We'll see you every week.
Yeah, ring the bell. Let's notify. Big busy week of sport and everything we covered here on Betting Weekly Studios. As we talked about there, the PGA Championship, the US PGA Championship, the second major of the year. Simon Holdren will be on this week on Betting Weekly Live, previewing that, giving his picks. We've got Betting Weekly Tennis Live. We've got the conclusion of the tournament over in Rome with myself and Sean Calver looking at Game Bet Match. We've got Betting Weekly Fast Break. We're following the basketball, and Betting Weekly Hardball with Doug Kazarian and Adam the Ball following the baseball. So we've got all ends covered here on the Betting Weekly Studios. As we said all throughout the show, please hit the subscribe button. Do join us back next week. Enjoy your week, and I've got all these favourites to bet. I've got Sabalenka to bet on the tennis. I've got the Sweden to win the Eurovision Song Contest.
And Rory.
The favourite to win. And if none of them win, it's all your fault, Neil. And if they do win,
come on,
thanks.
get on,
they
Rory.
were only the favourites. It was only the favourites. And that's it. Take care.
Cheers.